Cool. It should be starting. Did everyone see a little like thing come up?
Yeah, I saw it.
Oh my goodness, it's doing transcription too. Here, I'm gonna stop the transcript. There. Okay, cool. We should be good to go then. So Kira, you can take it away.
Okay, welcome everyone to the first GSMS event. So this one is called Planning for Your Future. So we're basically just going to go over a bunch of tips and tricks that we've learned over the years about how to plan for going to graduate school. So first, we're going to start by telling you guys a little bit about who we are. So we're a new club on campus. We're a CSA accredited club at the university. And basically our goal is to provide and refer students to either our mentorship programs or different mentorship programs on the university. So what we plan on doing are some online and some on-campus events. Hopefully we'll be able to do on-campus events with COVID and everything like that. But yeah, so like I said, we're trying to provide undergrad students with information and insight on professions that require grad school. So our first one is vet school, opportunities to talk to graduate students, opportunities to talk to professionals. So vets, or if we do branch out to other mentorship programs, it would be professionals in those fields, and general strategies and tips on how to get into grad school or how to plan to get into grad school. Yeah. So like I said, we do have an upcoming mentorship program. This is going to be called our pre-veterinary mentorship program, and our goal is to meet on Microsoft Teams twice per month with a vet student mentor. So basically what you would be doing is you would be filling out a mentee like Google form, and that would basically tell us what you're looking for in a mentor, and then we would match you with a mentor that has similar goals of how they want to have their relationship with their mentee. So these mentors are going to be vet students from OVC that are studying to be veterinarians in the future. And basically the goal of this program is so that you guys can gain feedback, advice, tips, and help to achieve your academic goals. So to sign up for this mentorship program, it's due by December 3rd, and you have to be a member of the Guelph Student Mentorship Society to be a part of the pre-veterinary mentorship program, but we can talk about this later. And again, it's targeted to undergrad students that are interested in vet school. And you have to be able to commit to the duration of the mentorship program, which is about 3 months.
Just to hop in there for a second, it's actually, we are having signups starting on December 3rd, and basically they're just going to keep going until we max out with our amount of like slots we have. We're estimating it's going to be around 50. So that would be the max amount of like undergrad students we could take on. But it depends on how many mentors we end up having, but we are probably going to have around 50. So yeah, but if you just keep up to date with us, you will be more than aware of the due dates for all that kind of stuff. But yeah, sorry, continue.
Okay. So also, we are actually having elections soon. So if you want to be part of this growing club, then we do have a few available positions. So we have a junior events director and 1 to 3 executive assistants. Because our workload is growing a lot as a new club, and so we need to take on a few extra helping hands. So the application deadline is November 25th. So it's today by midnight. So if you just rush on over, you can do your application if you want to after this event. But so requirements to apply, you have to be an undergrad student at the university. You have to be currently a member. And you can't apply to more than one position. However, like if you interview with us and we decide, hey, maybe you're more suitable for an executive assistant, but you applied for a junior events director, we would take that into consideration. We might offer you the other position. So it's still worth, just trying your luck. So in order to apply, you just need to email us your name, your pronouns, your year, and your program of study. And again, you want to mention what position you want to apply to, and definitely make sure to include your resume so we can see what your qualifications are and things like that. So for more information, you can go to our website, so gsms.ca, and it's going to be under our Join Our Teams tab, and then it'll have all the information there if you forget.
We also, if you go on there for more information, we have it has all sorts of requirements for the specific positions, as well as some of the interview questions that you may be asked, so that you can prepare for those in advance. And yeah, I would highly recommend coming and joining us because we are a very awesome team. Maybe I'm biased, but yeah. Signups our deadline is tonight though, so if you're considering it, make sure to get your application in before midnight. And feel free to message us if you have any questions.
Okay, so for membership stuff, so how to become a member of the Guelph Student Mentorship Society, basically you just need to tell us your first and last name, your school email. It technically, you don't have to be part of the University of Guelph, you can be from another university if you want to. And then you have to mention if you're in an undergrad or graduate degree. Fill out the form on our website. Again, it's gsms.ca. Our website does have a lot of other information if you're interested, upcoming events, again, how to become a member, how to apply for exec positions, stuff like that. And then you do have to pay the $10 membership fee. So the perks of becoming a member of the GSMS and paying the membership fee, so you can attend all the events for free for the entire school year. If you're not a member, you can still attend them, but there might be an associated fee. You can participate in our mentorship programs. So right now we only have the pre-vet mentorship program, but we might be expanding in the future. And then again, you can apply for any available exec positions on the team, and then you get our emails whenever we have important updates or important information to tell you guys. So yeah. And so you can find us and find all of our updates and information, upcoming events, all that stuff on our Instagram, our website, our Facebook, Growth Life, or YouTube. So YouTube will be posting recordings of our events and things like that. And then all the other socials will have updates on future events or just updates for you guys. So for tonight, we're going to go over all of this information. We'll try to make it as interesting as possible. I'm sure it will be. But yeah, so I'm not going to read them all out because we're going to go through them. But yeah, this is everything that we're going to be covering tonight. Okay.
Cool. So I will start taking over a bit of this. So planning your courses and extracurriculars in advance is so vital, in my opinion, when it comes to someone who wants to go to grad school someday. The thing is undergrad is way shorter than you may think it is. It's only 4 years, and that's 4 years worth of time where you need to be getting all the experience you need to get into your grad school, getting the grades you need, having the prerequisites and all that kind of stuff. And it feels so hectic to even think about or balance and all that kind of stuff. But I promise you, looking at all of that kind of stuff in advance and just breaking it down piece by piece really makes it a lot more manageable. And you can also really break things down and manage your time based on that. But basically, my suggestion would be plan your entire undergrad in advance. It helps to have a kind of notes format that you can look at, where you can essentially organize your undergrad in terms of your experience that you're going to be getting. So whether that be extracurriculars, being on clubs, volunteering for different places, stuff like that, or your academics as well, that would be another portion of it. And so splitting it into those two kind of categories can help. And so I find it's really good to do in an Excel document. We did make a template version of that, so we will be sharing that with you guys, but we'll take a look at that after. But the way that I think is really helpful to organize everything is, again, in terms of academics versus your extracurriculars and jobs and stuff like that. So looking at academics, some of the stuff you're going to want to consider in advance is the timing that you're going to take your courses that you want to take / have to take throughout your undergrad. So one of the most useful functions that I have found, at least as of recent, is the new Web Advisor function where you can like plan all of your semesters in advance. Very, very helpful. You can essentially take a look at all of the courses that you'll need to take for your degree, which I would highly recommend looking up in advance. And you can put those into your future semesters that you're going to have to take them. And you can also take a look at the kind of electives that you think you might want to take someday and start putting those into semesters. It will also tell you what semesters that class is offered. Sometimes they have like, oh, it's only like fall semester. Oh, it's only every other fall semester, stuff like that, which is pretty useful to know. Because then say you want to take a class that only happens every other year, and the year you want to take it is like 4th year and it's not one of those years, that's not very useful. So it's good to always keep that stuff in mind. But again, some of the stuff that you're going to want to kind of look at is like the electives that you want to take. Another important thing that I also think you should look at is can you move some of your mandatory courses around? Because at least what I think, it sometimes helps to be able to get some of the hard stuff out of the way at the beginning. It's important to make sure that you're not like overloading yourself. You don't want to put all of your like 6 billion like mandatory courses that you have to take in undergrad in your first 2 years and like you're like dying because they're so heavy and stuff. You don't want to do that. But if you do have the ability to take on some extra ones throughout like the earlier years of your undergrad, that can be really, really useful and helpful. Another thing that is very useful to consider is time of day for your classes. You should start thinking about what kind of like time of day you are most productive. Like, are you a person who can genuinely get up for 8:30 lectures? Because when course selection comes around, as much as you may really, really want to take a course because it has like amazing reviews and stuff like that, if you're not going to get up for an 8:30 lecture, do not select it. I promise you, it is not worth it if that is not what you can do. You need to make sure that you're selecting courses that are reasonable for your life habits and all that kind of stuff. So try and keep that into consideration when you are going into actual course selection for every semester, which is useful because that's like right now, guys. So definitely consider that. Also consider in terms of classes, do you prefer your classes to be all spread out throughout the day, or do you prefer them all in one block? If you take them in the morning, are you going to still be productive for the rest of the day with the other stuff you have to do? So planning out generally what your normal kind of week would look like and what times of day are best for you for both classes and all your extracurricular stuff is like super, super vital. It's also important to like really do your research on your courses before, not just your like mandatory ones, but all of your electives too. I have found it so life-saving to be able to just like look at who are the previous profs who have taught this course and like what are they like. Looking at because like there are like different ratings you can look at online for that kind of stuff. Looking at the previous course outlines is something that I've also found really useful. Most of the time, if you look up a course code, like say I'm like thinking like Bio 1090, so I just look up Bio 1090 course outline online and it'll bring up the like University of Guelph's like department that has that course. You can go and take a look at like a bunch of like previous course outlines from previous and like recent semesters. I know that a bunch of departments actually have some like tentative draft course outlines up for next semester right now. So it would be really good if you guys took a look at those. But looking at those can also be really useful when you're deciding on what courses you want to take. Because if you look at the breakdown and it's like 50% midterm, 50% final, and it's a really like heavy course that you're only taking as an elective, might not be the best decision for you unless that's something that you think you could really thrive on. But looking at the course breakdown is so useful. Another thing to also consider is looking at your prerequisites that you're actually going to need for your grad school program when you're applying. I know a lot of people end up having issues with this because if you don't look early enough, you end up not having enough time at the end of your undergrad to make up those like prerequisite categories that you might have needed, but you didn't realize you did. So I would highly suggest, if you know what school you want to apply to or schools you want to apply to, definitely look up the program you're wanting to go into and look at the list of like academic requirements they have, because those are exactly what you need to be taking. If you're like, if your grad school program is not one at the University of Guelph, where they may not have a list of University of Guelph course codes that are acceptable as prerequisites there, it's really helpful to actually be able to contact that school's admission services, and they can like give you all the information you need on if the courses you want to take or have taken would be acceptable. So definitely remember to look into that stuff beforehand. You also want to consider if you're going to be fully completing your undergraduate degree. For programs like vet school, like at the OVC, you don't need to fully complete your undergraduate degree before going into OVC. But if that's something that you want to do, you should probably keep that in mind as well. And again, you should like take a look at like your entire like schedule of like semesters that you're going to be taking every single year and go, okay, so these are the courses I know I have to take in these semesters, so I'm going to take them in these semesters. Okay, these ones I can move around a bit, so it might be more beneficial to put them in an earlier semester so that I can use my last couple semesters as my average towards this graduate program. It's also helpful to take a look, okay, these are some of the electives I want to take with these profs. They're known to be ones that I would think are very interesting and I think would not be like an enormous challenge to me and I might be able to do really good in. So maybe I want to move these towards the end of my undergrad, but also making sure to sprinkle some in throughout the earlier couple years so that you're not overworking yourself and stuff. So considering stuff like that is just so useful. But yeah, so that's definitely the kind of stuff I would look at with that. One quick note before I move on from academics. One thing that you can also look at when you look at course outlines that is super important is the lab and seminar components kind of things. Some classes like just don't have labs or don't have seminars. Some of them have very involved labs and seminars. So that's something you might want to take into account, because if you are signing up for an elective that has a lab that requires you to come in a bunch of the days of the week to be able to do stuff, that is going to be really time consuming and you might not be able to go and do all of the extracurricular stuff that you want to do. Unless that's something you really would prefer to take, then like go for it. But it's important to keep that kind of stuff in mind so that you have an understanding of how heavy and how much time you're actually realistically going to be putting into a course in the future. So definitely look at that kind of stuff. As for extracurriculars and jobs, what I would suggest is write down all of the jobs and extracurricular opportunities that like you're already doing or that you want to do someday. So say I'm already doing like, I've already been in this club, I've already been on this council, I've already volunteered at these places, or I'm currently volunteering at these places. Like list all of those down. And in addition, list down places that you've always wanted to work for or always wanted to volunteer for that you genuinely think you could apply for during undergrad. Because then if those are places you would really like to go to and would be something very beneficial on your grad school application, you can plan out when you are planning to like want to do those, which makes it a little less hectic and crazy than just like tackling things one by one and going, oh, well, I hope I can do this someday. It helps give you some structure in terms of having extracurriculars and making sure that you want to get what you want to do done by the time you need to actually apply for your graduate program. So basically, for all of the ones that you already have done, make sure that you write down like all of your hours and all that kind of stuff. We're also going to be providing like in the Excel document that we're going to be showing as an example and also providing with you guys with after, it gives an example of like logging your hours, which we'll talk a bit about later. But logging your hours is something super important. You're also going to want to put those down in the list, because that will give you an idea of how much time you've already spent on different jobs and extracurriculars. Because if you've already done a ton at one place, it might be really helpful to go to somewhere else. So keeping that in mind. Sorry. You should also be considering like your limitations with transportation when looking at things you want to do in the future. So say, oh my gosh, there's this really cool organization I would love to volunteer for, like this wildlife place. I would love to go there, but I don't have a car. So that's not going to be realistic unless like maybe I'm home and I live closer to one or something like that. Say winter break is a time that I could actually go there because maybe I have a car at home. Stuff like that. Those are really good to keep into consideration when you're planning out when you want to do extracurriculars. But basically, the way that I would tackle this is write down all of the academic stuff that you're going to be needing to do for each semester of your undergrad, and then take a look at your list of extracurricular stuff that you're already currently doing and that you want to do, and kind of gauge, okay, so these semesters coming up are going to be maybe this heavy, kind of stuff like that. I could probably take on this many extracurriculars, and kind of plan out when you want to stop doing certain ones, or if you want to continue doing them through all the way. And it's also very useful to write down when you would want to maybe apply for new ones and hope to already be doing them at a certain point. Because a lot of the time we know when certain organizations or like certain like clubs are like having elections or opening up applications to join as a volunteer. And so if you kind of have an idea of when in the year they do that, if you put that down in your plan, you'll remember, oh yes, in September of next year, or like September in 2 years from now, I should keep an eye out for applications to be a part of this organization, so that you remember to do those. Because if you just like say in your head, I want to do this in like 2 years, are you going to remember it? If you can, you are amazing. But a lot of the times, no, because we become really busy people. So having this kind of very tentative plan of what to do during all of your semesters of undergrad is incredibly, incredibly useful. I have found it very, very useful in all of my years of undergrad so far. And I would highly suggest you guys use a similar method, which I will talk a bit about after when we go over the kind of Excel organization file. This may sound very confusing when I'm explaining it right now, but I swear it will make so much more sense when you actually see what it looks like on paper. But yeah, so basically that's kind of spiel I would give about that. So yeah, we can move on to balancing life kind of stuff.
I'm still muted. Okay. Okay. So balancing life, I think, is one of the most important things of being in your undergrad. So you have to, and I cannot stress this enough, you have to plan days where you don't do school. And I know it can be hard because sometimes you're sitting around your house doing nothing. You're like, oh, well, I could be being productive right now. But you have to sort of treat these days as being productive in a different way. Like instead of doing schoolwork or doing kinds of work, you're working on yourself and you're making sure that you're taken care of. So don't touch your textbooks, do like a self-care day, do whatever makes you feel happy on these days. Another bullet point that we have here is set lifestyle goals to hold yourself accountable. So like go to the gym twice a week, or eat a healthy meal twice a week, or whatever, just to try and make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Set a time limit on yourself when you're going to stop doing schoolwork in a day, because sometimes when you're really working on a project, you can go into late hours of the night, and that is not good for your health. So make sure you set a time limit where you tell yourself, hey, I'm not going to do schoolwork anymore. I'm going to either go to bed, or I'm going to decompress and then go to bed, or whatever it might be. Make time to connect with your old and new friends. I know a lot of you guys are probably in first year, so you're probably making a lot of new friends, and it's important to foster these relationships because you're hopefully going to have these for the rest of your university life. And friendships are really important, old and new, in order to make sure that your social life is well taken care of. Don't tackle all of your goals at once. Try and plan it out. And we're going to go into more planning stuff later on. Keep a healthy balance between self-care, leisure, academics, extracurriculars, in order to prevent or prolong burnout. Personally, I think that burnout is a really prevalent problem in a lot of like undergrad students who want to go into graduate programs, because it's kind of we kind of have the mentality of like, well, we need to do something like all the time because we're working towards this goal of going into a graduate program, which needs a lot of, extracurriculars or high grades or stuff like that. But if you keep doing that and you just keep doing thing after thing after thing, eventually you're going to run out of steam, you're going to run out of energy, and you're going to go into burnout, which is not good, because if you're burnt out, you can't be doing productive work, and then that's just going to hurt you more in the long run than it would if you took time to take care of yourself in this like little moment, or take a day or two. So that would like benefit you more than just like powering through it. Keep a consistent sleep schedule, because sleep is really important, not only for your physical health, but again, for your mental health. And then keep a list of tasks or jobs that you can do that aren't urgent, but they still need, like, you still need to work on them. And then you can just do this when you have extra free time in your day.
Yeah, just touching on that a little bit more, it is so important to make sure that you are setting time aside for yourself during your busy life. We're all going to be really busy as students who are planning on going to grad school, because we have such high expectations of us in order to be able to apply. But you're not going to be able to meet those expectations if you don't set time aside to make sure that you are like resetting and taking care of yourself. So one thing I personally like to do is setting aside specific days of the month where I'm like, this is my self-care day. I am not scheduling myself for anything on this day, and I'm just going to plan what I want to do for that, but I'm not doing any of my extracurricular, job, school stuff, nothing. Like, that is just my day to reset. And I find that's really helpful. And I would highly recommend that you guys do a similar kind of thing. But one of the best ways to balance your busy schedule and busy life is by staying organized. And so this is going to touch a bit on some of the keeping track of extracurriculars and academic kind of stuff that I talked about before, and some more practical ways to actually do that. So one of the most like useful things I've found is having a planner. So shout out to Amy for like getting me to get one this year. But basically having a planner can be so useful. You just look in there and you can have your like day-to-day basis, weekly basis, monthly basis schedules. And so you can look at your schedule from like a whole different outlook, which is very incredibly useful. Looking at things from a day-to-day basis can be really helpful, because then you can have your entire like, okay, this is my to-do list for the whole day kind of thing. And you can literally like check them off rather than making like a mega to-do list to kind of come back to every day. You have specific tasks for every single day, which is very helpful. And for these planners that I'm going to be talking about right now, we have template ones that we're going to be sharing with you guys that are kind of like similar to what I already use in my own life. But I find very helpful. But I find it's helpful to have a planner that goes over your day-to-day basis schedule, because then you can take a look at like, oh, this is like a tiny task that I have to get done, or maybe I have to start an assignment on a certain day. Which days am I already doing a ton on? And you can make it so that you don't go over like a certain daily limit of tasks each day, so that you're not overloading one day with things as well. But basically it's helpful because then you can look at your other classes and commitments you already have each day when you're trying to balance other tasks. And what I really like, what's very satisfying, is being able to check off a box after, being like, aha, I did this kind of thing. I find that actually is very helpful in not being super overwhelmed by the things I need to do in the day, being able to just check it off or cross it off on my list, because then you know that like you're getting things done one by one in the day. But yeah, and so for a weekly basis, it also helps to know what's coming up in the week, because if you have an assignment later in the week, you may want to put it on an earlier day kind of thing. Going on a monthly basis, you can have a broad idea, which is so important during midterm season, of when you're going to be super busy. And so if you have different tasks and things piling up that you want to do, you can strategically plan like which weeks of the month you're going to want to do those, so that when you start to get busier with school and start getting bogged down maybe near like end of October, early November kind of thing, you're not going to be having a bunch of tasks on your list while you're trying to study for those. And so you can focus on the things that you kind of need to, rather than like the odd jobs that you could do any other time. But having a planner is very helpful because it prevents any surprises, and not knowing something is like due and like having to rush it and finish it and like not submitting your best work. You can literally put down in your planner specific days you are like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do this, which I find is really helpful, rather than just putting in a due date of an assignment. Put in specific work days that you are going to add and contribute to your assignments or study or add to your study notes and stuff. And then you will be a lot more productive because you've set aside that time to do those things, rather than piling up your days with a bunch of other tasks and then going, oh crap, I have an assignment due on Friday. So doing that is very helpful. So again, just briefly touching on this, having an Excel sheet to cover all of the kinds of like stuff that you're going to be doing can be really, really helpful. One thing that I find is useful with Excel is you can put in all of your courses and you can put in every single due date you have for it. So like all of your assignments, your quizzes, your exams, everything, put all of those in, put like all of their due dates in, and you can even put like a little checkbox if you want to be able to check it off after. Not mandatory, but basically what you can do is you can like color code it by course and then have Excel order it by date. And then you can see in order by day when all of your stuff for different classes is going to be due. And it makes it really, really easy to be able to actually go, oh my gosh, so I have this coming up next, this coming up next. Because sometimes it's hard when you are taking 5 classes at once to kind of sit back and think about, okay, what do I genuinely have coming up next? Because sometimes it feels like it's just one thing after the next, and you don't really know what's going on. But keeping track of it like that can be very, very useful. And you can also keep track of it, of your grades on all of those assignments. That's something that I personally like to really do, is keep track of all the grades I'm getting across all of my classes at once. Just so then I have an idea of if I'm like struggling in one compared to others. And I can go, okay, maybe I want to prioritize this one a little bit more. And then lastly, the last thing I would probably say is look at things again from a yearly basis. That kind of relates to the Excel document that I was talking about before with planning out your entire undergrad. Look at things from a very broad perspective to know when you want to do major things in your life. And being able to write those down and plan those out in advance helps you actually be able to achieve those in the future. But again, we will show you more about that after. So yeah. So another super, super important thing that I think a lot of you guys could benefit from are some of the UFG resources that are here. Some of these I didn't even know about until like second year or even third year. And they would have been so helpful to know about before. SLGs can be super, super helpful. You can like literally go in and have extra, like almost like, how would you even describe them? Like class sessions outside of class to get extra help. A lot of the times it's like a TA or like several TAs there, and you have other peers there that are working on things as well. So you can get the extra kind of help you need. There are also places like in the library, like the Learning Commons areas upstairs for like statistics, physics, chemistry, stuff like that, that you can also go to that can be really, really helpful. A lot of them are only doing online sessions right now, but in normal school years, they would have TAs in there, and you can literally go in and you're like, say you're having like an awful time working on your chem lab, you can go in and get some help right there from a TA, which is so, so helpful. I know I did that in first year. Some other stuff you can get help with in the library. You can get like writing and studying support, which is crazy. I didn't even realize, but they will literally, you can book an appointment with them and they will have someone come sit down and look through like your essay with you, your paper or whatever. You don't even have to have it finished or like even a draft prepared before going in. Like they can just help you get on the right track, which is so awesome. They can also help you with all sorts of like studying and time management kind of stuff. I know that they also have their own like templates for like time management and stuff like that. So those would be awesome to look into. They can also help you with some of the research that you're doing and guide you towards some of their resources that they already have there in the library, help you again with your paper that you're going to be writing and finding the kinds of databases that you need. Like they do a lot of database stuff as well. So if you ever have any issues with that, go to them because they totally know what they're doing and they can help you out quite a bit. They can actually even help you with your resume, which is something that is so relevant to us because a lot of people like aren't necessarily taught how to write a resume. I know I was never taught in school. So it's something that a lot of us have to figure out on our own. And it can be really helpful to have another pair of eyes who knows what to look for and knows what's professional and good to take a look at your stuff for free. And like you just sign up and get feedback. And basically all of this kind of stuff you can just access on the library website. So if you just look up like University of Guelph Library, go on their website, you can like book all of these kinds of appointments for free and get all the help you need. And they also offer like online workshops for like a lot of these different topics as well, if you instead would rather like watch something than get personalized feedback. So they have a lot of different options. One thing that I found was actually really cool that the library does is they have these sessions where basically if you find that you're more productive studying around other people or in a public space, but you can't do that, they have sessions where you can literally just go on Teams and other people will be there and you all just like sit in silence and study together, which I think is so genius because I'm like, okay, like I am definitely someone who like finds myself a lot more productive when I'm in public working on things. And so having something like that would be so useful, especially if you're like stuck at home or like maybe doing some of your work from home for school. Having something like that might be a really helpful way to be able to still study and be really productive, even though you are in the comfort of your own home. So keep that in mind. One thing I also really like from the library is their mark calculator. Hopefully you guys already know about that, but if not, literally look up like University of Guelph Library mark calculator. And basically you can like for every single one of your courses, you can put in the course breakdown, like how much each assignment or like test and stuff is worth. And as you go through the school year, you can put in your grades and it will tell you exactly what you need to get on the final to achieve whatever average. Like, oh, I want to pass, I want to get a 50, you need this much on the final kind of thing. Like, oh, I want to finish with a 95 in the course. Okay, that means you need to get a 98 on the final. Stuff like that. It can give you really, really helpful, useful information. It is so, so helpful to keep an eye on how you're doing in your courses throughout the school year so you know what to prioritize and stuff. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. Student wellness services is also really great. They have like a million different services. I genuinely can't even like name them all. Like they have all of their like healthcare providers there. So like if there are any like healthcare needs that you have, but you're like, oh, I don't want to have to like go find somewhere in Guelph, it's on campus, which is so awesome. And a lot of the different healthcare services, so like they have like physicians, chiropractors, physiotherapists, nutritionists, like stuff like that. They have everything under the sun. You can do a lot of those appointments over phone call or like digitally, which is super, super cool and awesome in my opinion. So I would definitely check that out if that's something that you are interested in. And a lot of those different areas of student wellness services also offer a lot of really cool workshops. I know like I recently learned that like the dietitian services have these like really cool workshops that you can go to like every week and they're on like different topics. Like one week is like, oh, how to like eat healthy as a vegetarian. Oh, like the next one, how to like keep your appetite really, really good throughout the year and stuff like that. They have all sorts of free random workshops that you can go to keep up with your health. So definitely check out that. But yeah, they basically have all sorts of different resources so that you can be taking care of yourself and your wellness. So keep that in mind. Another thing that can be really helpful, especially for experience kind of wise, if you're looking to get some experience, but you don't know where to start, University of Guelph Student Experience is a really good place to look. They have just like postings for tons and tons and tons of different stuff you can do, especially a lot of stuff at our school. That would be super awesome experience to be getting if you want to go to grad school. So I would like highly recommend checking out on there. And you can literally just type in keywords for the kind of graduate program you want to go into. And they'll like bring up all sorts of workshops you can go to, all sorts of like development, like activities and stuff like that you can go to, or like volunteer opportunities, jobs, stuff like that. You can find all of that in like one central location, which is so awesome in my opinion. So I would definitely take a look at that. And one thing they actually just posted yesterday is you can now get a professional and career development record from them that you can give to your employers. So if you do a bunch of like workshops and like activities and events and volunteering through student experience, like you can have a professional record of that they'll give you, and you can use to give to your employers and stuff, or like use on your application, which is super, super awesome. So keep that in mind because that's very, very helpful. Another thing I would definitely say is an awesome resource is your professors and TAs. I swear, like if you talk to them, like you will find it so, so helpful, because like when you seem excited in their like in the course content and what's going on, you want to reach out for help. Like professors really, really love that stuff, and TAs too. TAs love to be able to help people much more than you like may think they do just listening to them in lecture or lab. So reach out to them, because I promise like they are so much less scary people when you actually go up to them, and they can provide you with some really, really helpful resources. And you can genuinely be able to go up to like professors who are writing your exams and be like, hey, do you have any tips for studying? And they can usually point you in the right direction, which is so helpful. So take advantage of that in their office hours if you can, and definitely get help from TAs if you can, because they know exactly how like professors and they're going to be grading things. So make sure to do that. One thing that I find is useful is checking discussion boards for courses like a lot. A lot of the times questions you may not even realize you had are being already like put up on discussion boards. So make sure to check your discussion boards on CourseLink, and keep up to date with all the emails being sent out to you. And yeah, and going to office hours. One thing that that relates specifically to graduate studies is Graduate Studies Preview Day. I believe they already had one this year in September for our school, but basically the University of Guelph runs this program called Graduate Studies Preview Day, where basically they have this enormous pamphlet that they go through with everyone that covers every single graduate program at our school that you can apply to, all of the requirements, how to find out more, all of that kind of stuff, like the cost for it. It's super, super useful. You can actually find their previous pamphlets online, even the one from this year. So if you literally just look up like University of Guelph Graduate Studies Preview Day, you may even be able to look it up in your UO Guelph email, because they actually sent a lot of people emails about it. You can find that pamphlet like for free, and like take a look at all the different opportunities for different degrees you could possibly get at our school, which would be awesome. Another really great place to look for experience is Griff Life. Griff Life, a lot of organizations will like post volunteer opportunities on there. And you can literally just sign up through there, similar to how you can with student experience, which can be a really useful resource when finding experience, especially because, again, you can narrow down your search with like keywords. And I find a lot of people actually don't think to look on student experience or Griff Life. So you may actually be able to find a lot of vacant positions that are really, really awesome that other people haven't taken yet. So definitely check those out. CSA accredited clubs, definitely check out on Griff Life. If you just look up University of Guelph like CSA clubs, you can find the entire directory, and if you go through, you can find a bunch of clubs that are probably related to the specific graduate program that you want to go into. As Kira mentioned before, we're going to also be advertising a lot of those clubs and stuff, but it's really useful to get in connection with all those clubs too, because say you want to go to law school, like if you go into some of the law clubs that we have, they might be posting about law related opportunities that you can get involved in. I know that me following like the Animal Biology Association or like even UGAIN has definitely gotten me some like animal experience, because they repost relevant experience to what I want to do. So definitely make sure to connect with clubs that are at our school, because they will usually advertise different opportunities that are within your realm that you will kind of want to go into. So check that out. And then the last thing I kind of already touched on before, the Web Advisor course planning. 100% take advantage of that because it is so useful to be able to plan out your entire degree in advance. It will also tell you if you're making all of the requirements for your degree when you're on there. So do that. I promise you, it will save you so much stress, and you will feel a lot more prepared for all the stuff that you have coming up. But yeah, that's at least what I have for that. So we can move on. So time management, that is definitely something you have to consider when you are planning out your daily tasks in life. Some of the things that are important to think about, like how much travel time do you actually need? Like, do you have a car or do you rely on buses, stuff like that? How much time do you spend on relaxing and self-care? Because if you're not spending enough, that's definitely not a good thing. And you should probably start to balance out your life a bit more and start looking at, okay, where can I plan out that time? Look at how much time you spend studying for a course. It's really easy to just get into this like tunnel vision when you're someone who's trying to go to grad school and you just have to like study, do extracurriculars, all this stuff. Like you just get in a tunnel vision of like, I have to do all this work and you just forget to take care of yourself. So try and like keep track of how much time you're actually spending on courses and studying, so that you're not bogging yourself down too much. Also keep track of how much time it usually takes you to complete papers, assignments, quizzes. How much time does it take you to write notes for different classes? How much time does it take for you to get ready in the morning, to get ready for bed? How much time do you spend on work, extracurriculars, stuff like that? All of that's really useful. I would highly recommend logging your time for like a week because it is so revealing to see how much time you genuinely spend in a week on different things. And it'll tell you a lot about what you really need to start prioritizing in your life. So doing that and checking in with yourself every so often can be really useful. So I would recommend logging your hours for like a week and seeing where that's at and reassessing yourself throughout the semester. Again, using a planner, there are like tons of free ones online, like besides the ones that we're giving you. Like you can literally make your own DIY one. You can get like a physical copy, you can get a digital one, like all that kind of stuff. Invest in a planner. I am telling you right now, it is so useful. So definitely do it. At the beginning of the semester, one of the best things that you can do is just putting all of your important dates into your planner and checking it daily. Do that at the very beginning of the semester because then you can plan everything else around that because those dates are set. You can't change them. But if you put them in ahead of time, you'll have all of that in advance. So do that and like have all those dates sorted out because then you'll have an idea of when you need to plan everything else. And also with how you plan your days, make sure that you're being reasonable with what you're actually putting down as your daily tasks. Because as much as you can make it so that you can't max out beyond a certain amount of tasks, like I'll only do like 6 a day or whatever. If you put like really heavy things that you probably aren't going to be able to accomplish in a day, that's not very productive. So make sure that you're spreading out heavy weighted things and making sure to trickle in a lot of light things between a lot of days so that you aren't making one day particularly more heavy than another and not being able to get things done, because that's when you start to get really behind things. So make sure that you are being reasonable and also consider when your prime time of day is that you're going to be most productive. Because if you say have your classes like late in the afternoon, but then you put down that you're going to do all of these tasks in the day, but you know you're going to sleep in, that's not going to be very productive because you're not going to be up in the morning. So definitely consider that before you start putting down daily tasks. But yeah, and we'll be showing you the planner stuff later. But yeah. Another thing to consider is how to lighten your heavy workload. I know that this has been something that has been so difficult for me to do during undergrad because life can get so busy being in like a million different like volunteer programs and clubs and doing like 5 heavy classes at once and all of that kind of stuff. It can get really overwhelming, but one of the best things you can do is lighten your heavy workload of classes. Because that, I swear, will make your life a lot easier, especially when it comes to like studying, because there's only so much you can control in your life. But if you can make your school a little easier it's a lot more helpful. Plan your personal due dates. So again, allocating times of the year in advance that you're going to do certain things. Like, when am I going to start working on an assignment? How many times am I going to like work on that assignment throughout the semester before it's due? And when am I going to finish it? Planning those times out in advance and making sure they're not super close to when the assignments actually due is very beneficial. Planning when to study is also very helpful, and also how often you want to update your study notes. Something I would recommend is updating your study notes every 1 to 2 weeks. These would be your notes that you would study off of during the exam. Not only does that keep you very up to date on what's going on in class, but also you're organizing the course content and structuring it in a way that you're going to understand. And you're already going to have all those notes prepared when you're in midterm season, exam season, stuff like that. I know that like when I started doing that in first year for the first time, I was like, wow, I can't believe I feel so much less stressed right now because I don't have to write notes on top of trying to study for things. So I would highly recommend doing that. So yeah, starting your exam notes from day one and updating super frequently is very, very helpful. Keep a master to-do list of like all your kind of stuff that you have to do and get done. If you write down like all of the like assignments and stuff that you have to do for the whole semester, all of the different like club meetings you're going to have to go to, all of the different volunteer shifts you have to go to, write all of those down. You can basically plan out when you're going to start working on different tasks that are a bit more flexible, like around those things. So definitely kind of have like a broad perspective as well, which is what I like monthly/yearly calendar can be really useful for. And also studying smarter. So this is like a technique that I have recently developed with my studying, because I feel like I've tried everything under the sun to like figure out how to tackle really heavy courses. But by far the best method that I have found so far is figuring out how to prioritize important content versus like content your professor may not be testing you on. So we have like little pictures on screen, but that's literally my handwriting of like what I do for preparing for midterms and tests. Basically, I will go through the like entire units of content that I need to know and just write down like the headings of different units and then like the subheadings. So like in that example, it's like homeostasis and thermoregulation, and then all of the different topics underneath that. I'll write all of those down and put like little check boxes beside them so I know when I've like actually studied them. But basically what I'll do is I will then figure out, okay, so which ones are going to be the most important that I need to study first? Because sometimes courses can be really, really heavy to the point where you feel as if it's kind of like not reasonable, at least in the amount of time that you have to be able to fully get all of that content in your head. So what I find really useful is a highlighting method. So what I'll do is throughout the school year, I will keep track of whenever my like professor says I either need to know something like 100%, if I don't need to know something, if something is key, or if something's important. Like if they say those two words, like it's probably going to be tested on. So keep those in mind. If they say that, I highlight in like one specific color, and I do that throughout my notes through the entire semester. So when I go back to make my checklist, I know, oh, these are the important ones and these are the ones I don't need to know. And then if your class has a lab or a seminar, also figure out where there's overlap between your lab slash seminar and your lecture, because a lot of the times that's also what's tested on. Another thing that is also really helpful is if you look at, like if your professor gives you like past exams that you can like practice off of, or like practice problems, or even if you have your quizzes that you've already done in the course, highlight the kinds of like topics that all of those are on, because chances are those are the important ones that they're going to test you on as well. And so then what I'll do is I will basically color code my whole checklist based on those things. So say all of the things that were like lab lecture overlap, I'm going to highlight in blue. All of the ones that I know I have to know because they said it's important or that I do need to know it, I'm going to highlight in yellow. And I'll do that for my entire checklist. And so anything that is highlighted in multiple colors is the most important that I need to know. And so I will prioritize the things that are highlighted in all like 3 or 4 colors before I start like prioritizing the ones that are highlighted in one. So I find that method is very, very useful when it comes to tackling really heavy courses, because then you're making sure that you're knowing the most important key concepts before you start getting into other stuff. And I find that once you actually study those key important concepts, all of the other stuff kind of comes along a lot easier. And I have found a lot of success when actually doing midterms and stuff using this method, because I end up having studied the exact content that ends up being on there. So I definitely recommend doing that. And a couple other things that I can recommend for studying smarter: set days that you're going to review course content. It helps if you do that every week, but it can be helpful if you're already writing notes for that course anyways every week and updating them, because that is essentially you reviewing the course content. And try different study methods. You can literally try things like flashcards, like saying it out loud to yourself, saying something out loud to like a friend of yours, coming up with practice questions, stuff like that. Try out different study methods, because a lot of the times it's better to use more than one than just to use one. So I'd recommend trying to branch out into different areas like that. And so for note-taking and studying, developing a system of organizing content is super, super important. So as I was saying before, I always highlight the super important stuff I need to know. So whenever my professor says key, important, I highlight those in like bright neon pink in all of my notes, so I know that's the stuff I need to know. It's, I think, very, very helpful when you start color coding things if you can, or coming up with like a method, like maybe you put a star beside things that you know are like super important because your professor said so. Come up with a system that works for you, so that when you go back to look at those notes, because chances are, like with 5 classes going on at once, you're not necessarily going to remember what a professor said was important in a specific lecture like 4 weeks ago. So if you already indicated that in your notes, it makes it a million times easier to make your notes. So definitely do that. Doing the study checklist method is really, really helpful. I kind of already talked about this on the previous slide. I keep getting ahead of myself on here, but very, very helpful. One other thing I would also suggest is look at your course link discussion boards before like actually going to an exam or anything. A lot of the times people ask really useful questions you might not even realize you've had, and the professor answers very also like usefully before you go in. And so that might give you some like things to keep in mind, like before going into an actual exam or like studying for one. So I would highly recommend keeping up to date with your course link discussion boards, especially during like midterm exam season, stuff like that. And just in general, because I find a lot of the times professors will literally give you like ridiculously close hints to what they're actually going to be giving you on things. So definitely check on there. Keep up to date if you're in any course groups. Like I know like some people like have groups on Facebook, like you're like the must knows group with like the obscene amount of people in it, or like course specific groups. Keep up to date with those, because a lot of the times people will be like collaborating on making notes or stuff, or like someone maybe went and talked to a professor and got some really important advice that you might not have heard about. People will talk about stuff like that in there, so keep up to date with those because they can be incredibly useful. Again, talking to your professors and TAs, they can offer you a lot of helpful insight in what kind of content to study for and what method of studying might be most useful for their course, which would be useful to know if you want to do really well in it. Again, try combining your study methods. Also, I find it's really helpful to look for feedback from students who have already had that prof or taken the course before. You can do this on like, there's obviously like online ratings out there and stuff like that. You can also go in the like must knows group on Facebook, and that has like thousands and thousands and thousands of current and like past University of Guelph students. And you can literally like be like, hey, how's this course with this prof? And like type that into there, and you'll get a ton of students answering you, which is so, so helpful when you're trying to decide like what electives you want to take. Or like if you want to ask, hey, how was the midterm last semester with this professor for this class? And like people going, oh, like they focus maybe more on lab content, they focus maybe more on lecture content. They like, there's like every important question you could ever have about a class could get answered in there. So I would highly recommend looking for resources like that out there where you can get advice from past or like students who have already taken the course before or had that professor before, because they'll probably be able to give you a lot of helpful insight that you may not realize going into the course on your own. So definitely do that. And then one other thing I would like to say is consider the grade that you want to get for that course or your whole semester in advance. One thing I found is really helpful is if, say I was in first year and I go, okay, I need to get at least a 80 average this semester. I have an actual goal to reach. If you set yourself like a actual tangible number goal, it makes it a lot easier to actually achieve your goals of doing well academically than if you just go, well, I just hope for the highest mark I can get. So doing something like that can be very helpful. What I used to do, especially in high school, and I have been trying to do in university, is like increasing the amount like percentage wise that I want to get every semester. So like say I'm in first semester, okay, I have to at least get an 80. Second semester, I have to at least get an 85. Second year, I have to at least get a 90. Like stuff like that. Giving yourself specific hard goals makes it a million times easier to like know where you're aiming at rather than just being like completely blind and going, yep, I need to just get good. So doing stuff like that makes it a lot easier to achieve your goals. Hi, Kira, it's your turn now.
Okay, so we're going to move away from academics and move towards more working and extracurricular stuff now. So building a professional profile, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you're staying connected with your contacts from previous experience. I do have a little anecdote for this. So I used to volunteer at a wildlife refuge, and recently I saw my old boss from when I was an unpaid intern while I was shadowing, and she remembered me from the intern position, and she actually offered me a paid job. So leaving like either a volunteer place or an intern place or a workplace with a good, like leaving them on a good note is very beneficial for your future, because they might come back and say, hey, like, do you want a reference, or do you want another position here, et cetera, et cetera. Headshots, if possible. It's not possible for everyone, but headshots are important for things like your LinkedIn profile, or even like if you're applying for like a executive position, or like you're on the board of a directors and they want like a professional photo to put on of you. You have to make sure that your resume is updated, because if you're applying to volunteer positions or work positions, then they're going to want your resume just to make sure that you have like relevant experience. Cover letters, those aren't always like requested, but sometimes they are. So make sure you keep cover letters from that you've either made before, or like maybe a template. If you've never made one before, you can find like tons of them online. Just to make sure that you have something to reference back to when you're writing them for future jobs, to apply for future jobs. Wow. Okay. Also, you can create an online professional profile, like on LinkedIn, like I mentioned before, with the professional headshot. LinkedIn, I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of it, but if you haven't heard of it, it's basically like, it's kind of like Facebook, but it's mostly for like work experience. So you can put like your name, your pronouns, your bio, and then all your like different work experiences or volunteer experiences that you've had. Attend events and join groups to broaden your network. So there's a lot of like networking opportunities for like to meet like people in your field or people like you that want to go into a certain field. So like us, we're trying to connect you guys with students that are already in the vet school program. So things like that, like broaden your network, make connections, because especially in jobs where you have to go into post-grad education, knowing people is a really important part of eventually getting a career in that field. So yeah.
Wait, I have a quick thing to say that's really like on that point. Like, I have a friend of mine who just got a position at OVC as like a surgery, like a helper of like one of the oncologist, like veterinary oncologists during surgeries. And the only reason he was able to even find out about that is because it's a position that's only talked about by word of mouth. It is not advertised online. And so that's just an example of like why it's so crucial to broaden your network, because he heard about that position from another person who used to work there before. So keep in touch with like all the people that you've like met in your experiences before, and also make sure to continue to go out and try and like broaden your network of people that you know, because you never know, like stuff like that could come up and you could end up getting a really awesome experience because you knew someone. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like I emailed, I don't know if you guys know, but Professor Sherry Cox, she's a professor at the university, but she also does wildlife medicine. I emailed her and was like, oh, can I volunteer at the National Wildlife Center? And she was like, oh, well, we're only taking vet students and vets. And I was like, oh, that's kind of sad. But I was going to give up there, but then I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to tell you, like, I am trying to be a vet student. And Sherry was like, oh, well, if you're trying to be a vet student, then maybe you can come volunteer at my small animal clinic. So I volunteered at the small animal clinic for a little while, and then I met a vet, Dr. Melissa Stallenhoff, and she was actually Sherry's intern. So I ended up shadowing her and again bringing it back to wildlife. So that's just a little story about how like the more people you know, the more opportunities you're gonna have. Which is that point right there. Don't be afraid to contact professionals or educators for advice, because the worst that they can say is no, and that's not really that bad. And then always check your emails, messages, and voicemails, because there might be a new opportunity popping up somewhere. Yeah.
Kind of going into like very tangible ways to look for experience. As I mentioned before, Experience Guelph is a really great place to look. So definitely look that up, because there's going to be a lot of stuff on there that people may not even think to look on there for. So I'd highly recommend checking it out. So when reaching out to ask for a position, you should probably consider things like, what platform is it like actually being advertised on? Because that will change how you decide to go at things and message whoever you would be messaging for the position. Remember to be super, super professional and polite. One thing that I find really helpful is if you are like unsure if you're coming off super professional or not, you can literally download things like Grammarly or put it into Word, and you can like select the level of professionalism you want in your writing, and it like a computer can generate like what it thinks about that and give you suggestions on how to change it. And on top of that, you can like obviously even get like writing tips on like how to write professionally and stuff from our school, like our library. So you could look into something like that. But remembering to keep it super professional, super polite, but adjusting obviously the professionalism to whatever you're applying to, because you don't want to seem super overqualified for something that's super chill. So definitely make sure to kind of match the vibe for whatever you're applying to. Let the person know how you heard about the position. A lot of the time they really like to know that, rather than just like you showing up out of nowhere. Show some personality in your messages to people. Like they don't want you to just seem like, oh, I want job position, give me job. Like I find that a lot of employers and people that are hiring like volunteers on and stuff like that, they like to see when there's something different about you and you're very excited about the position. Like show your interest, so show that there's something different about you. Tell them why you would be a good fit, like what makes you stand out compared to what other people might have if they're applying for the same thing. And also, like, please don't be afraid to follow up if like you don't get a response, and don't be afraid like to reapply for something even if you've been denied before. Like I know that like one of the clubs I'm on, like I applied in first year and they gave me another interview for like another position, but then I ended up not getting any. But then I applied in second year and then I got in. So like trying again is not a bad thing at all. I would highly, highly, highly recommend like doing that, because that actually shows that you have a lot of maturity and you have a lot of dedication to the organization, and you're not necessarily just going to give up after giving like one go and getting rejected. A lot of the times organizations will really like to see that. So don't be afraid to do that. And again, don't be afraid to follow up with people. Sometimes keep in mind that emails get lost, or like someone opens it and they forget to open it again. So following up can be really helpful if you don't get a response after a while, because that could mean that you end up actually getting the position you want rather than if you ignored that. search in keywords relating to the position you want into your search engine or like wherever you're looking for, because the internet can really do some magic with narrowing things down for you. So make sure to do that. Be very specific about the kind of thing you're looking for. It sometimes helps to like look up like jobs for students relating to this, and then you can have an idea of, oh, I want to go to like law school. These are some jobs I could potentially have, or volunteer opportunities I could potentially look for as an undergraduate student. And then like go from there, actually looking up like, oh, this position in Guelph. And then you'll like see if any come up kind of thing. Narrow it down very specifically like that, because chances are that's going to be the best way for you to find what you want. Look for online postings. A lot of like, everywhere. They're literally everywhere. Like keep up to date with different organizations' socials, because they will post things on there. You can go on like websites like Indeed. Even Facebook is doing like a new like job offering function. Like I literally get like random things being like, hey, kennel assistant job at this clinic, which I have not seen advertisements for anywhere else, which is awesome. So looking at things like that, looking at LinkedIn, you can get connected with like so many different people on there. And it's basically an opportunity to have your resume already all in one place that people can look at. So that would be an awesome way to actually look for job opportunities. And I know that LinkedIn can also narrow things down to what your experience is all about and what you're looking for, and make it really easy to find employers and get straight into contact with them, like right then and there. You don't have to like go searching for emails or anything, just like that. Another really helpful resource is professors and TAs. Like you wouldn't believe the kind of opportunities you could potentially get, especially for research positions, if you literally just ask your prof. A lot of the times they're looking for like undergraduate students who are willing to help out with that stuff. And they really like when people have interest in the kind of research that they're doing. And having a research position is a really good way to get experience and form a really good connection with a faculty member at our school who could potentially even be a like reference for you someday. So look into stuff like that, especially if you know that you have a professor or a TA who is researching something that you may be really interested in helping out with, because a lot of times they would be more than happy to have someone help. So look into that. Keep connected with like your peers and different like clubs at our school, because again, a lot of the times they like to repost very relevant experience that you can be getting on their stories, on their socials, like all that kind of stuff. So keep up to date with that. If you also like, if you know your college government, like it can be really helpful if you're on their like listserv or follow them on socials, because they also post a lot of like relevant stuff. I know that at least if you're in like the agriculture college and like SOFAC sends out their listservs like every week, they post like tons of opportunities that aren't just at our school, like opportunities that are just around in Guelph and in Ontario in general. So following even your like college government can give you a ton of opportunities, especially if people like aren't looking at emails, which a lot of the time people don't. You might be able to take advantage of positions that other people just aren't applying for because they're not looking for them. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. And one other tip I would love to give you is look for certifications. A lot of the times when you're applying for grad school, they'll have a section for you to put your certifications and awards. A lot of people don't realize this, but it's an awesome opportunity to think about that in advance and go, hey, these are maybe some certification courses I could take that I could like put on there and would look really great, because maybe a lot of other people might not have that if they didn't realize that certifications are something you can put on there. So if you like have your lifeguarding certifications, if you maybe want to get first aid, you can get like crazy first aid certifications. Like I have like my pet first aid, which is very random. And you can get like all sorts of like certifications in like leadership and stuff like that, like everything like under the sun. You can get a lot of these for pretty cheap, or like nothing at all. So look into that kind of stuff, because it might end up making you stand out from other people who are also applying in your cohort.
Okay, keeping up to date. So make sure you're checking the admissions requirements because things change. For example, this year, like the average calculation for OVC changed. So usually it's just your academic average, but this year they're including your CASPER score. So just make sure you're checking what the requirements are for the year that you're applying, just to make sure that you have everything in order. Always compare
also they change courses too. They change courses out of nowhere without notifying you too. So remember to check the prerequisite list of acceptable prerequisites, because sometimes they just like add some or like remove some out of nowhere. I know last year they added like Agger 2340, which wasn't on there before, but like was an extra opportunity for some people. So keep an eye out for that, because you could be having extra courses you could be taking. But yeah.
Yeah. And then compare your progress and goals to what you need to have to apply. So make sure that you have, like Chloe said, like all the different like courses that you need. And then you can subscribe to the admissions page of the certain postgrad program that you want to apply to. And then sometimes they'll like post like updates like, hey, this is changing, or like this is when this is due, or whatever, like things like that. So just make sure that you're keeping up to date with those kinds of things.
Yeah, keeping up to date is very important. But touching back on one of the things we were talking about before, which kind of has to do with keeping up to date with things, is log your hours. It is so important, because a lot of grad schools, and people don't always realize that some applications for grad schools require like really specific, like down to the number, like how many hours you got of different experiences, and like having someone be a validator that you can put down that can essentially say, yep, that's true. So make sure you're logging your experience really well. If you're volunteering at like a whole bunch of places, make sure you're putting down every single time you go in there, like what the hours were, what the day was, what you were doing, and like how many hours you actually spent there, and like then you can actually keep track of how many you're doing there. The logging hours is another thing that's kind of included in the Excel document that we'll be talking about at the end, which is very soon we're going to be looking at those. But it's super vital that you do that, because it can get really scary if you get into grad school applications and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I have not been recording my hours, and the person I was working with has also not been recording my hours, so I have no clue how long I've been here for. That can be really scary, and you don't want to get put in that position. So make sure you're keeping really good specific track of your hours. And another example of keeping in touch with people, this is really useful here, because if you need a validator for your hours, if you're keeping in touch with whoever can account for you actually having done those hours, that can be really useful. Even if it's from experience from a while ago, just keep in touch with that person. Just talk to them every so often. Be like, hey, how's it going with like things like at work and stuff like that? Like, just like touch base with them every so often. So you're at least keeping the connection, and you can have someone in case you need someone to like actually validate the different hours that you're going to be doing at things. But keep very good track of those, so that when you get to applications, you're having no problems.
Wow, I keep doing this to myself, keep muting myself. Okay, so talking about experience again. So make sure you're finding people and places that are gonna give you the best quality experience possible, rather than focusing on more hours. Because when you're applying to grad programs, during the interview process, they're going to be asking you like, hey, what did you do at this like volunteer position or at this job position? And if it's like, if you're focusing more on the quantity more than the quality, then your answer to that question might be a little bit lackluster. So when you're looking for places to apply to work or to volunteer, make sure you're asking what kind of work you'll be doing, to kind of like think like, hey, is this useful to me? Like, am I actually interested in this? Do I want to do it? And make sure you're looking for places that can give you moments where you're able to learn and you're able to further your understanding of whatever you're going into, whatever's interesting you. Because if you're just doing like work that's not really like furthering your interest in the topic, it might not be as valuable as something else. And then there's no minimum requirement for experience hours that graduate schools are looking for. Again, they're looking at the more quality-based things where you can say, hey, this is what I learned, or this is a moment in my volunteer position that made me more interested in this graduate field, whether it be law school or veterinary school or whatever it is. So just make sure you're working on quality versus quantity experiences.
Yeah, that's super important. I know some international schools do require hours. So if you're planning on going internationals, take a look at that. But from what I know, a lot of like graduate programs here in Ontario don't have a specific amount of hours for experience that you need to get. A lot of the times it's the quality of experience that they want from you. So just make sure you're doing something that's actually worthwhile and actually going to make you stand out, rather than something that's just taking up your time. But yeah, so our last topic that we're going to be talking about before we just quickly kind of like screen share the different like free resources we're going to be giving you, and then allowing for questions, is just preparing for interviews. A lot of graduate programs have interviews, whether it be like the Casper kind of process plus like an individual interview with like an admissions person, or maybe it's like the MMIs, so like multiple mini interviews. A lot of different grad school programs have that kind of stuff, so it's important to think about it in advance. One thing you can do is practice the kinds of questions you'll be asked like beforehand, to prepare yourself for it. A lot of grad schools, like if you're going into something more research-based, your questions are going to be a lot more different than if you're going into maybe like med school, dentistry, law school, like veterinary school. A lot of those ones are more so ethical based, compared to like something more thesis based into if you're going into like research instead. But if you're going to be getting asked ethical questions, there's a lot of different ways you can prepare that can be really useful. So one thing you can do is preparing these questions with a stranger or someone you don't know well. That'll put you in a bit of an uncomfortable position, which is important to be able to get over if you're going to be interviewing for like the admissions people who you don't already know who are from this grad school. So just make sure that you are like preparing in that kind of environment beforehand, whether it be with like maybe so like an adult coworker that you've like worked with before, or like someone like that, someone you are not entirely familiar with, so that you're not like super comfortable talking around them. And that might actually reveal quite a lot about you that you didn't realize. That person that you are maybe not so comfortable talking around might be able to give you some insight on some habits you may have that you don't realize, whether that be through how you're talking and like words you repeat quite a lot, or different like things that you're physically doing. I know that like in high school, I found out that I like pace back and forth while I'm doing presentations, which I had no clue I did until someone told me. So having that kind of outsider view that isn't someone you're entirely comfortable with and going to be acting very normally around is super useful, because you can get rid of all those habits and work on them a lot before you go into your interviews. There are so many like free resources and stuff. Like you don't even like have to pay to like get the kind of practice questions you need for these like ethical based interviews and stuff. A lot of clubs at the University of Guelph that relate to like some of the specific grad school programs that require like interviews with ethical questions, like they literally run events where you can practice some, or like receive questions that you can practice later, stuff like that, or you can hear from people who have already taken it before. There are a ton of clubs that run stuff like that, so just keep an eye out for that, because that stuff is so useful. Our club will be reposting stuff like that when we hear about it, so keep an eye out for that, because a lot of clubs will run like Casper events or like MMI events that can be really useful for you to go to get questions, or also see how other people answer questions. You can also get like free examples online. You can literally just like look them up. There are different books you can get that teach you how to actually address these ethical problems. It's also really helpful if sometimes you can even like contact some of the students who have already are already in the program and have already had to go through that admissions process, which is partially what we're trying to do with our mentorship program, just offering people the opportunity to talk to vet students about what that's like. But you can literally find free questions in like YouTube videos. Some admissions websites will even include examples that you can practice with, or like resources you can access. There are different like online programs you can take. And you can even come up with your own questions and problems and scenarios that you can like pool in a group of friends and like answer together. Doing stuff like that is like a very like affordable, like no cost way of prepping for your interviews. But also remember to practice your typical interview questions too. It's not just going to be your ethical questions a lot of the time. Like they do want to know about you and why you should be in the program. So make sure that you prepare for your very stereotypical interview questions as well, because you probably will get asked some of that and you don't want to get put on the spot. But going off of that, you want to prepare like something to talk about for every single bit of experience that you're going to be submitting on your application, because a lot of the times I've like heard about different grad students out of nowhere, like in their interview, being asked about the most random thing. Like I met a vet this summer who said that during her interview to get into vet school, they asked her about her cheerleading experience, which is so random. And so it's a really like her helpful advice to me was just like prepare something to talk about for like every bit of experience you're going to be putting on your application, because they could literally ask you about the most random thing and you don't want to get thrown off guard by that. It would be really good to have something prepared to talk about that, why it made you who you are, what you learned from it, kind of thing. Prepare that in advance, and like you should be pretty set, at least for your experience. And it also shows that you definitely got the experience that you say you did, because you were able to back it up by like talking about how you learned from it, and stuff like that. And another helpful tip is getting feedback from professionals you've interacted with before. So even if you've like gotten rejected from a job, or something like that, like it can be so helpful to just be like, hey, what did I do wrong? Or like, is there anything you think I could improve on, that would make you like potentially like hire someone like me someday? Like I'm looking for advice on how I can improve on my interviewing skills. Doing something like that, a lot of the times, like professionals, like if it's like a job employer or something like that, will like are more than happy to be able to give you feedback on that kind of stuff. So definitely look into that. As much as it may feel awkward, it can be one of the most helpful things that you can do. So definitely do that. And you can also ask other people who have interviewed you for things before, even if you got into them, like into the like actual programs that they're with, or like organizations, whatever you're doing. Ask them what their experience was interviewing you and what they think you could improve on, because having that outsider view is like one of the most vital, crucial, important things that you could have, that you definitely can't get from just seeing how you interview yourself. And one other way that you can also kind of see some of the stuff you can improve on is recording yourself answering interview questions. It is very uncomfortable just like sitting in front of a camera in an empty room being like, hey, this is my answer to interview questions. But that kind of puts you in an awkward position that you might feel like interviewing for a grad school. So doing that can actually help you pick up some of those habits that you maybe have. And you can see how you realistically in real time answer your questions, so you can understand what you need to talk less about or talk more about. So doing stuff like that are all really useful ways that you can prepare for your interviews, even now in advance, like years before you actually have to apply. So yeah. So we are going to be having like a question period, but quickly before that, we're just going to show you the templates that we have for you that we're going to be providing, like links to like on our socials and like website and stuff like that for you to download. It'll also be like in the Teams as well, so that you can access those templates if you need them. But yeah, so before we get into questions, we will share those. Kira, are you good to like share those? Because my laptop is like heavy breathing.
Oh my gosh, I feel like a professor right now. I can't. When they're like share my screen and they don't even know how to do it. Oh my gosh. Oh no. Hold on, I'm just opening all of them. Okay. Okay, so Chloe, do you just want to talk about them, or do you want
Yeah,
to? Yeah.
I can explain the spiel. So if you want to go to sheet 1, I'll just give a quick rundown on what that is. So basically, this is how I like to organize my experience. So like this is an example of like, say you're like a pre-vet student, how you can organize all of your different types of experience. So say there like you have like this is my vet experience that I'm getting. And this is my goal. I want to work at like 6 clinics, or I want to get 6 different veterinarians so that I can like put all of that on my application. And so you could put down like the different clinics you were working at, the different veterinarians, how many hours of experience you got with them, what your time frame was of like when you actually got experience with them, what type of experience it was. Do you have any goals for it? Like, oh, I want to get X amount of hours with this vet specifically. I want to like do this much of like this kind of thing at this clinic, stuff like that. And then I also like moved it into like animal experience, because that's another thing that pre-vet students would probably be looking at. So like having like, I worked at a zoo, I worked at like a horseback riding barn, stuff like that. And basically same kind of spiel as like the vet clinic one, looking at your hours, time frame of experience, type of experience, etc., and like logging all of that down. You can also put all of your work experience into here, like every kind of work position, because a lot of the applications look for that, not just like your experience specific to the actual grad school. You can put your volunteer and extracurricular experience. So that'd be like your clubs, the different like organizations you volunteer for, stuff like that, different committees you're on, all of that kind of stuff. And then we also have awards and certifications, and you can put down when you actually got that award or certification, and where you received it as well. So you can start keeping track of that. And then if you keep going down, we also have academics. So this is also one way to keep track of your average that you're going to be using to apply. So this is like everything that you'd be putting on your application minus like essay questions, like all the experience you have, as well as the actual grades you're going to be submitting for your prerequisites. So you can put down like, what's your goal? Like, I want to get over a 90 average or whatever. And then your different categories of prerequisites. So again, this is just an example of like, say someone who wanted to go to OVC, like those are the different categories of prerequisites you need. And so you can decide like the classes that are on there as like classes used for prerequisite category, like that can be any of the classes you've taken that count under their list that's on their website. If you check out like, for example, the OVC website, they list every single prerequisite like category that they have, and then like all the courses at the University of Guelph that are applicable and you can use for it. So you would just put like all the ones you want to use for it on there, put what you got as the average in that class, and then like total up your overall average for the like prerequisites that you have, and then you'll have that there too. And you can kind of track like, okay, what categories do I still need to get things in, which is helpful when picking electives. And then if you want to go to sheet 2, this is an example of like tracking your time like through like a log. So like say from the previous example, I want to track every single hour I got at clinic 1. I'm going to put down like the date and time that I was in like every single time. And that like helps me keep track of the actual hours that I've spent there and like when you actually started there and stuff. And you can also keep track of the kinds of experience you get there too. You don't necessarily need to write like an essay for each one. Just having like any outstanding kind of unique experiences that you've had and like logging when you actually did them is just super, super useful. So you can do that. But basically like the way I would organize it is like, since this is like clinic 1, which is counts as like vet experience, I would put all of my vet experience on one sheet for my time tracking log. And then if you go to like sheet 3 there, you'll see that I have an example for a different kind of experience. So animal experience, I would like put in basically like the different animal places that I've been getting experience at, putting in all of like my dates and times that I've been there so I can keep track of all the hours. And then also keeping track of like the type of experience I'm getting, just so that you're like prepared. And this also helps with like interviews, in the sense that you are also like giving yourself a list of things to talk about each experience you've had, without actually having to think back about them. You can literally just take a look at your list at some of the like outstanding experiences you got some days at certain places, and there you go. Like that's what you can talk about during your interview. It makes your life a lot easier in the long run. So updating that frequently is pretty helpful. We can move on to the more so like calendar planner kind of stuff. Keeping even a basic calendar like this is very helpful. A monthly calendar can be really helpful. Just like put down your like major dates for things you need to know. Like I wouldn't put any kind of daily day-to-day stuff like classes on here, but I would put stuff like assignments, like major due dates for like quizzes, or if I have midterms coming up, if I have different jobs or like extracurricular commitments I have to make, I would put those in there as well. And you can also fill out like the notes kind of stuff at the bottom if you want to like color code what you're putting into your planner. I know that I like to, and I'll like color code it for the different classes that I have. So I have an idea of, oh, this class, I have something coming up due soon. And it just makes it a bit more like visually easy to look at. So yeah, I usually color code my different like work and extracurriculars, my different classes, and also when I'm going to be taking some like self-care time. And this is kind of what I would use for like a weekly / daily planner. It's really, really helpful because you can essentially, even if you don't want to use like the times on the side, we're going to be sending you a version that isn't a PDF. So if you want to get rid of like the times or like make things bigger, smaller, different colors, whatever, you can go nuts with it. But like generally, this is like pretty much what I tend to use on a daily basis. I'll just like write down all the tasks I have for the day, and I'll make sure that I don't like go over a certain amount. I'm not doing too many heavy things in one day. And it's nice because you can literally just check off each one as you get them done or cross them out. And looking at it from this perspective makes it feel a lot more like manageable and less stressful. And you can have an idea of not only all of the tasks you have to do on that day, but everything you have to tackle for the week. And you can distribute things accordingly. But yeah, so those are the kinds of different